Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. We'll give just a quick moment for everyone to sign on and join. And we are going to kick off in the next 30 seconds or so. It's great to see so many faces. All right. That's all right. Also going to, in advance, let folks know we're going to ask that everyone mute, and on our end, we'll also mute folks as needed just to ensure that there's not any disruptive interruption during the presentation. This webinar today is again presented by Arts Alliance Illinois and Sagin LLC and is being recorded for future reference and as a resource for the field in the future. So thank you all for being here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Sasha Ongtenko, Program Director for Creative Workers at Arts Alliance Illinois. Welcome to all of you, all of us together coming, really convening here today to learn more about a rapidly reshaping sort of technology that is changing the way that our workplaces and in general, the workplace culture and creative work is being done. So today, we are gathering to learn a little bit more about something that's kind of in our faces a lot these days, AI and the arts. We're diving into AI really as a means of better understanding how it works. I really wanted to take the time before we get started to underscore that, what we hope to do today is intended to be a conversation, a presentation that's going to help sort of ground us in understanding more of the mechanics and the nuts and bolts of the various tools that now exist, and that exist to help, I think, in essence, improve certain tasks and certain processes that have for already many years really informed the way businesses work, the way organizations work. At the same time, it's rapidly reshaping the landscape. And so today we are not in any way, as Arts Alliance Illinois, endorsing the use of artificial intelligence tools or learning language models. There are several that we'll learn about today, and certainly not celebrating it to replace any sort of artistic or original creative work. We understand that generative AI poses a lot of threat and has created a lot of strong feelings around its use, especially considering that Arts Alliance has taken a lot to invest in investing in strengthening the creative workforce. And so we do see the threats to creative livelihoods. And it's important to me and to the organization that with the field in our community, we're level setting around how that Arts Alliance will always be pro creative freedom and ensuring that all artists, all creative workers have access to the resources and are protected in the many ways that are needed to ensure there's economic stability for all. And we are already under a lot of pressures with threats to funding and now from this direction of what feels at times like threats to our own ability to create and I know there are a lot of threats around democracy that are kind of underscoring a lot of this too. But what we do not engage in, what we do not understand, can at the end of the day become more of a threat. So today is really about education and whether or not you choose to use any of these tools. Ultimately, we think it's important to know about data and privacy protections, um, how to equip ourselves in that as we continue and as the world continually learns more about we have yet to see the impacts of all of this new technology. So better to um, learn and have the information so we can make informed choices. I also will be able to point to different resources from our partners with Lawyers for the Creative Arts, as well as just acknowledging that there are several pieces of legislation that look to set up guardrails around uh, really the way that AI and the intersection with data and privacy are continuing to, they're in like active discussion now in general session at the state level. So I'll drop those. I can drop you are welcome, and we encourage you as our community to follow along as Arts Alliance is also monitoring that legislation. Because again, at the end of the day, it's important for us that artists, first and foremost, have the continued ability to thrive through the resources and protections around their work and their livelihood. At this time, and just a quick introduction, also about Arts Alliance Illinois. We want to acknowledge our two partners today. So Arts Alliance, again, is Illinois' arts advocacy organization. We seek to build the creative sector's power through connecting those stakeholders across the state to resources in service of improving the quality of life in communities all over Illinois. And so we have done a number of webinars really focused on resources for individual artists, creative businesses, and nonprofit organizations. And we invite you to sign up for our newsletter and stay informed about the different educational programming that we have to come, which will include a worker rights series, which will include other educational topics in partnership with like Sagin, also different institutions across the state around capital development, around small business development and supports. And we are grateful for all of you to be here today. Sagin is a leader in technology support, research, and deployment of technical solutions for the nonprofit and arts community. And Sagin provides the IT support and thought leadership for museums, theaters, cultural institutions, and education. And there are a number of clients in Arts Alliance's network that Sagin has worked with and supported in the past. So I will now at this time turn it over to Sagin's CEO to take it away for today's content. Please feel free to put questions in the chat as you listen, and we will address questions following Richard's content and also after we hear from an artist in practice. And be great. We would also wanted to lift up the perspective of an artist who's also actively using various tools, just to give a taste of how some of this has been, how some of the tools that you'll hear about today are used in the day-to-day. All right, thank you so much. Richard, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Sasha. I am Rich Sypniewski. I'm the CEO of Sagin. We're headquartered here in Chicago. We've been around for a little over 16 years. Just to add a little bit of background on us, we are independently owned and operated. We're not funded by any other type of organizations or that, and we don't resell other particular AI products or that. So we're fully independent. 40% of our actual clientele are nonprofits, centered anywhere from museums, theaters, cultural institutions, to universities and educational facilities too as well. So we are pretty much, we operate basically the IT environments for a lot of our clients that outsource us, but all of our support and everything is local within the state of Illinois and Chicago, even though that we have clients from coast to coast and then from Canada and Mexico as well. And we are also an LGBT certified company, which is certified by the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce out of Washington, D.C. as well. So that gives you a little bit of background on us. And so today, what we're really going to talk to you about is kind of describe the overall AI environment and give you more of a technical perspective of what's happening behind the scenes, where things are in today's um, day and age right now, and where it might be evolving to. And specifically, then towards the end of our presentation, we're going to touch on a little bit about the challenges and considerations as it relates to the arts community as well. And then talk a little bit about some future awareness that you should be aware of really in your decisions and how you use the different products or that to really protect yourself going forward. So what I want to first do is talk to you a little bit about how does AI work? Like, what is it? So when you look at the slide that I have here, in the center, you'll see like kind of this figure here is a brain. So AI actually, as it's artificial intelligence, has actually been around for decades. I mean, I've been in business for over 30 years, and even in college, I remember at undergrad, we talked about AI, but it was a concept, really. It wasn't really coming to fruition. And right now, it is. It is coming to fruition because the mechanics are there, the technology is there, and it's ever growing. So, what you want to think of AI is this brain in the center. And for any of you who either have children of your own or you grew up with your nieces and nephews or that, or even if you're in the education space and you're working with children, you'll notice that as a child from birth, all of a sudden they're kind of grabbing at different ideas, and it's where you first learn your first words, how to speak, how to not touch a hot stove, and so forth. So you're constantly learning. And so that's where AI technology is. So you have to think of it as kind of like an application that is constantly learning. But as a child, where do you learn from? You learn from data. So when we look at the AI environment, there's lots of data that's out there. And where does that data reside today? It's residing in various data centers. Every time that you do a Google search or any time that you shop online, if you're using Amazon, if you're using Google or any of these big giant data centers, Facebook for that matter, all of that data is housed in these data centers, and that's where the sources are. You also have to think about like public media. So anything that is put out there in kind of the internet is stored somewhere. And so what AI is doing, it's then these engines, these AI engines or code, so to speak, is taking that public data and then processing anytime that you have a request. So your requests are what you see here over on the right is individuals or companies have requests and searches for different types of data and information. And as they create those requests, you sometimes are opening your systems of your data, depending on how you're actually doing those searches or those queries or the tasks that you're asking it to do. It's gathering your information of what you provided and also looking at public information too. And we'll talk about the differences of the different applications that are available and out there. And then it produces output. And that's what this is, even more data and more storage. So this is why you're seeing in the news today the growth of data centers and why they're needed and everything, because ultimately you have the supply of the data, but then you have the output, which then is even stored even more so that becomes more of that growing and growing brain that needs to draw upon that. And then naturally, these data centers consume a lot of energy. It's consuming a lot of electricity. It's consuming a lot of water. So it takes a lot to process this data and information, and it requires a lot of energy. So then what happened with AI is there was these growth of these software applications. And what these software applications are, and you'll hear a lot of the more popular ones, Chat GPT, you'll hear Anthropic, or also known as Claude. You'll hear Google Gemini, you'll hear Microsoft Copilot. These are some of the larger thinking applications that are out there that are primarily used today for personal productivity. So it helps you summarize an email, helps you write a particular article that you are trying to write. But everything that you do in your day-to-day activities, whether it's searching for a particular topic or whatever it might be, this is really the genesis of AI is starting to get into those particular spaces of personal productivity to help you become more productive by day. And then naturally, the applications are then growing from there. And when we look at this entire environment, right? There are two types of really environments here. There's what we call public and private. So every time that you go out on the internet and let's say you just do a Google search, that's public. So you're out there, you're using a public search tool and everything, and you might, even if you're using a free version of Chat GPT or looking at Anthropic, Claude or that, all of those, they are free versions, and all those free versions are public. So whenever you are using a free version of any type of AI product, it is learning off of your data and information, and you are essentially contributing to this overall learning and brain. It's not until you actually start purchasing actually licensed product that which then you have the option to not basically participate in that overall data sphere. So that's a big that's kind of the big wake up of all of this should be is when you're utilizing any type of AI tool today. If you're using a free version, you are contributing to the overall knowledge of the overall environment. If you are an organization, then and you have licensed product, you are essentially only looking within your organization's data and information, and you're somewhat protected. And when I say somewhat protected, is because some products you actually have to physically opt out. So even though that you have a licensed product, so for example, if you're using Microsoft Copilot is only utilizing the data and the information within your organization as itself. But if your organization has licensed product of Claude, which is an Anthropic product, or ChatGPT, you have to physically go into the application and opt out. So that way you're not sharing the system is not learning off of your data information, and it's all self-contained within your company. So those are a couple of little idiosyncrasies that are not on the surface, but they're very important of knowing to protect you. So when we look at AI products that are out there, so a lot of the ones that I just rattled off and quoted to you, like Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, these are all what we call large language models. And so these were the early developers. These were the people that first got out into the public and private space with actual product that you could actually purchase or use for free for that matter. Those are going to be the ones that are much more widely used for personal productivity and so forth. The other aspect is what we kind of call is specialized applications. And what those applications are designed to do, those are really designed to support either specific purposes or specific type organizations or missions or goals for that matter. A lot of people, you may or may not have heard of like Palantir. So Palantir could be one of these organizations that does a lot of more nefarious type stuff for our Department of Defense because most of their work is centered around defensive applications. And that's where you see like kind of the targeting applications that look at how do we actually use AI to find a person and hunt down a person and so forth. So that's where their defensive applications come into play. But you also see applications in this space that's used for coming up with new cures for diseases and vaccines for viruses and so forth. These are all highly specialized applications that are going to be very, very specific to a particular industry. And they are also centered around much more larger organizations that are buying product for that specific application. Then there is also the hardware component. So as I mentioned earlier in that overall model, it takes the data has to be stored somewhere. So there is actual hardware that has to be built, created, put into these data centers. And down below, I just named off of just like two of the largest players in the field. And these are the people that actually make the equipment, the chips, and everything that goes into the overall environment. So the combination of these three spheres is what makes up the AI community or AI environment. The ones that you're going to be mostly interacting with, my guess is in a lot of your careers and the development is going to be centered more around the larger language models. Now, naturally, within the artist community, there are specific applications too, as well, for composing songs or writing manuscripts or creating actual visual and digital art. And we'll have some little bit talking about some of that towards the end of this as well. So as we move forward and we look at these three environments, how are they actually being used today? So the consumer products, those are the things that you're interacting with, most likely broad use, chat assistants, things of that nature. When we get into enterprise solutions, if you are a arts institution, such as like a museum or an education facility or in theater arts or that, there are applications that could be used to assist you with the actual operations of your business. So you'll start to see AI assisting in marketing and sales or in ticket sales or in help desk for that matter. You also see it being used a lot more in financial analysis. So if you're looking at guest participation at a museum, how long are they in the museum, and doing any type of those analytics in that, what you used to crunch through in a spreadsheet for a long period of time or that and filter through maybe multiple systems of data that took you a lot of time, you're starting to use more AI applications of looking at how do I analyze my business better, maybe improve my donations, improve my guest participation, whether it might be a cultural institution or things of that nature. Down below is the custom developed apps, which you'll start seeing that more so in your heavy scientific areas, such as research and development and cures or autonomous driving and driverless vehicles is where you'll see those types of applications. When we were asked by Sasha, we gave a similar presentation of this, and it was basically training executives on just kind of the overall mechanics of AI. And Sasha attended that, and when she asked us to present to your group here, one of the things that really stands out is there's really two audiences. And so when we look at AI as it relates to the two audiences, there's the individual artist, and then there's also organizations and institutions. And so when we talk about like what are some of the challenges and considerations, there's some that cross over between both, and there's some that are maybe specific to particular organizations. Naturally, the one thing that crosses over for both of you, both of these two audiences, is protecting of your data. Just knowing what, if you start using a free application, just know that anything that you're sharing with it, you're sharing it with their whole community and whole environment, unless you have an actual licensed product. And in particular cases, if you have certain products that you actually opt out, where you're not publicly sharing that data information. Another area that is different for the artist that the artist must be concerned with is one is having creative freedom, having the personal productivity to enhance your ability to create more content, but then also protect the content you have. And then also, if you already have content that is out there, how do I protect it from being actually monopolized by another party as well? Within an organization, it's a little bit different because now you are an institution. And one of the things that you have to be protecting not only of your content and the material that you have within your organization, but you want yourself to become more productive. You know, as Sasha mentioned early on, one of the biggest challenges in the arts community today is where your funding is coming from. So you need to be from an organization, you want to improve your productivity, you want to improve your data analytics and your analysis. so that way you could actually improve your funding. Because as we're seeing what's happening in the arts community and everything is the funding cuts that have taken place over the period of time, and that we have to become much more productive and resourceful. And so AI can assist in helping looking at your analytics and helping you make better decisions more quickly and more effectively within your organization. The key thing is so this is all great, Rich. We appreciate giving us the big picture and the high level view, but what can I do today? What should I be thinking about today? And how can I best protect myself? And again, here is it really focuses on two types of audiences because the needs could vary differently. Um, so one of the things that you could easily do today, or before actually getting into this, just to highly mention that this space is really evolving and it's evolving fast. The thing that we cannot change is we cannot change to say that it's just going to go away or it's just not going to exist and it's not going to be there. So really what we wanted to highlight here is what can I do as an individual artist? What can I do as an organization and start thinking about today so I could help, work around these challenges and considerations that are happening going forward. So from an artist perspective, you really need to be focusing on, and this also could apply to the organization, but more as an organizational level decision, but you need to make a conscientious effort of, what tool am I going to use a tool first of all? And if I am, how am I going to use it? And what tool should I use? And that goes back to what I said earlier. Just keep in mind that anytime that you're using any type of free version that's out there, you are sharing any of the data or information that you put in there, you're sharing that with basically their entire environment. So that's something to be very, very, you need to make a conscious decision on how are you going to use AI, if you're going to use AI, how you're going to use it, and then which tools should you be using. Um, the other thing is you want to do is limit the number of AI tools you use. So obviously there's a lot that are out there. I ideally yes, it's okay to start experimenting with some of them, but really see which ones that you're more comfortable with. If you are a user of, let's say, Microsoft, so you have a Microsoft 365 account, it is much more logical for you to at least start using a Copilot if you're going to go down this path. Why? Because it's integrated already in their product. Microsoft Copilot is also the only one out there today that you do not have to default or you don't have to change the default to be sharing your data. So if you have a licensed Microsoft 365 product account and Microsoft Copilot, it is only sharing just your data and information. If you have purchased versions of Claude or ChatGPT, you do need to go into the settings and opt out to then make sure that you're not sharing your data. The last thing from an artist perspective is you really want to attain a good understanding of what the data and content that you're sharing with AI is. Naturally, there's also going to be some legal ramifications later on that we're not touching on or getting into, because there's just what is true content, what is actually created content, and so forth. But those things, just keep in mind what we're saying is that anytime that you're sharing data and information on a free type of application, whether it's images, whether it's content or so forth, you're sharing it with that entire environment. From an organization standpoint, that differs from the artist's perspective. A big thing that you really need to do right out of the gate are the first two items on here. One, identify how do you want your organization to use AI and where. So am I going to use it on the creative side? Am I going to use it on maybe the financial and operational side aspect of your operations? So this is what we call use cases. So, and what we strongly advocate is within your organization, you create a cross-functional IT team. A lot of our clients that are nonprofits that are either large institutions or maybe even small theater groups or that they they still have a team, a cross-functional team that combines the creative side with the operational side, with the marketing and sales side, that has a discussion at least once a year that like how should we actually be utilizing technology. And that includes technology all the way from what you're using for, let's say, ticket taking, what you're using for performances, what you might be using for personal productivity. And so those are actually use cases. So you need to define what those use cases are, how you're going to be utilizing that technology. And then from there, the next important thing for an organization is writing a policy, an AI policy. And so, and you say, well, that's nice. Policy, we have policies for everything within our organization. True. But the difference is really in point number three here, is depending on the technology you deploy, once you have a written policy, which this states how your organization is going to utilize AI, there are methods that you can within applications and restrict how people can actually utilize those tools when they're within your environment, utilizing your equipment, your network, and so forth. And so we've worked with a lot of our clients in the past of like how we could take that policy and put those restrictions in place so you ensure that you're not only protecting your intellectual property, but you're also protecting the users and your employees within your organization as well. And then you'll formally select your tools. And then really then there needs to be a program going forward of every year or so investing in training and education of your employees. Lastly, before we then jump into any Q&A or that, and then hear from one of the additional the artists here that Sasha has brought to talk about how she's going to be utilizing AI or utilizes AI today. The key thing is regardless of what your viewpoints are, and as I mentioned, so we work for our clients. So we represent our clients and we look out after our clients' best interests. We don't represent any type of software companies, and we have no opinions as far as whether AI is good or bad. I think there is definitely a lot of pros and cons about it. I think the most important thing that we really try to educate a lot of our clients and people that we talk to in this space is the cat's out of the bag. We can't change it. There's nothing that we could actually do about it, but we need to figure out how we're going to work with this new future, right? And I think the key thing is I mean, the pros on it, yes, it could help you create content. I mean, we've seen people who are songwriters and so forth that have the ability to actually start creating content much faster in that. There's a pro side to that. There's also a con side to that too, is where is that content actually coming from? Is it coming from the individual or is it taking bits and pieces from somewhere else? But it definitely does increase productivity and helps you become much more productive and bring things to market a lot faster. The cons are, again, the con is that the content is questionable. Where did it come from? What was the source of that content? The issue of plagiarizing and stuff, it all becomes an issue. The other thing is displacement of workforce. Now, although we haven't seen a significant amount of displacement of the workforce, but naturally, when it comes to productivity, a con is yes, it actually in IT development, the people actually the irony behind the applications are the people that wrote it are actually some the ones that are higher at risk of job security from an IT perspective, which is kind of ironic in a way, is the people that wrote the application, now the actual applications can actually start writing actual code a lot faster than they can. And then naturally, there is also an environmental concern about the technology too. It does consume a lot of energy. The more data centers that are out there, I mean, every time that you buy something on Amazon or that, you are actually contributing to a data center every purchase that you make. And that's just going to require a larger and larger data center as time goes on. So that energy consumption is not only for just electricity, but also keeping those centers cool as well. So a lot of people don't realize just because I might be reutilizing water, that water is coming in cold and going out hot, so it's got to cool off again. So it still consumes water, it consumes power, and so forth. So there's a lot of pros and cons to work with. And And what we're seeing in a lot of our nonprofit clients too is they're incorporating these things into their policy decisions based upon what type of nonprofit they are and what their mission is. And so I think it needs to become more of a conscientious decision is what we're advocating now, whether you are an individual artist or whether you are an organization of how you're going to work in this new type of environment and what type of guardrails and controls that you want to put in place. So with that, I'll close there. Here's some additional contact information. I'll turn it back over to Sasha, and if we want to address any type of Q&A, I'll have to admit I was not staring at the chat room, so it wasn't purposely not addressing any questions that may have came up.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Well, feel free to keep your contact info on that slide and for providing some of this um, high level information on the various tools that are already actively being employed in various ways across the workplace, not limited to within the creative sector from an administrative standpoint. I again want to acknowledge a lot of the pros and cons that you mentioned, and really continue to underscore how important it is to Arts Alliance, the spirit in which we believe that education and being able to name that there are very real cons about the use of these tools, notwithstanding environmental. And at the same time, I have heard from the field of the ways that certain tools have been used to help optimize time on the administrative side, especially for organizations who really have limited operational capacity to apply for and be able to complete all of the necessary documentation and grant compliance requirements. And to the extent that some of these tools have been supportive in that way, is worth, we felt, to just say that. But it's really, I think, connecting with one another and connecting with Arts Alliance, Sagin, Lawyers for the Creative Arts, like we're all here for the field to help navigate this very uncertain new time. I wanted to also, we're going to get to questions in the chat, but I wanted to highlight also to humanize this topic somewhat. I invited an artist to join us to just speak to a use case in their day-to-day life as a staff member and teaching artist at Chicago Center for Arts and Technology. So I wanted to invite Yidi Lang to talk a little bit more about how she's using these tools in helping kind of streamline some of the administrative pieces of her work. Edie, take it away.
Yeah. Thank you, Sasha, and thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone. I am Edie, and right now I'm currently working at Chicago Center for Arts and Technology. It's also a nonprofit organization. We offer free education art classes for middle school, high school, and adults. And mainly our stuff is about like art and technology. And me myself, outside my teaching artist job, I'm also an artist. I graduated from my CSC with my MFA for Design for Emerging Technologies. And I do art and technology installation, performance art. So, and thank you, Sasha, for inviting me for being here and talking about what is my experience for using the AI. I can say that I'm AI person. I use AI in my day-to-day life a lot. And because I also do 3D modeling and 3D animation. I also use a lot of AI tools to like generate images. I also use AI tool to generate 3D models. So I just wanted to share a little bit of my experience with it. A lot of the times, a lot of the admin work that we do, I would say AI would save a lot of time for me. It doesn't mean that I'm gonna let the AI to do the whole job for me, because I would more to describe it like when we were back into the old time when we were living in a cave, like a cave person, like the original person, and the first people that discovered fire were gonna be super afraid about the fire because fire can destroy everything. But later on, people started to know how to use fire, so they have cooked food. And later on, we have stoves, so people became chefs. And I would say this kind of experience, it's similar to how I feel about AI. If you do fear about it and you don't use it and imagine that it's going to take over everything, you may be always being hurt by the fire. But only the good chef can know how to use the fire, train the fire, merge with other tool, and to create fine dining. So that's how I feel about AI. Before you started to fear about it, at least you need to give a shot and try about it. And I know as an individual user, I was a little bit worried about, oh my God, my shared information, my shared work going to be exposed. But actually, I've been using Cloud and ChatGPT both at the same time. A lot of the time when you are sending information to these AI robot, it's not going to directly share it to a third party. Your information will be using for the OpenAI system for itself to train itself. So it's not like, okay, I actually post my painting on one of the AI, and then suddenly another person outside in another living in another place on the earth receive my stuff. It's not like that. So I guess this is still similar about 20 years ago when we started to use internet. It's the same thing. People were worried about internet's going to take over everything. Or if we talk about a little bit earlier, like TV, when TV was discovered, people will feel like, okay, TV is ruining all the teenagers. People were just staying at home and watching TV. But later on, you started to feel like, okay, this is just one of the technology and this is just one of the tool. We can always, as a human, use a lot of like strengths or getting help from Sagin, tech company like this to like restrict some of the points and to better use as a tool. For me, I don't use AI to directly generate the art that I'm creating, but I let it to give to feedback some of my ideas, or I send out my ideas to some of the AI to let it critique for me. We all know as a working artist, I have my full-time job, but I also at the same time, I wanted to do my art. And when I'm not in the school environment, a lot of time I don't have people to talk to critique my art. I don't know how my idea sounds like, and I don't know what are the medias I'm going to use. And then AI could be a powerful information researching platform for me, at least to gathering all of the information that I need at the first point. Let's say if you are a person wanted to learn about 3D modeling and you know nothing about it. Before AI, you may going to go to YouTube and select all of the videos, try to follow all of the influencers who made 3D animation video, and you follow step-by-step tutorial. But right now, what I can do, the way that I'm doing it is I ask a guy, what is the first step? What should I do if I wanted to learn this software specifically? And what are the stuff that you can give me? Can you give me a weekly plan if I wanted to train myself in 30 days? These are the stuff in before time, I need to pay for people. I need to pay for people to be an advisor to teach me how to do that. But now I can use a powerful information system to do that. I think speaking about the creativity stuff, I would say a lot of times I heard about people saying, oh my God, what if a lot of the artists are directly generated by AI, and I don't think that's art. To be honest, with the more experience with using AI, you will find out the scenario is more like if all of the students in your class are using AI, the average GPA it's been improved from 3.5 to 3.85. So in that case, 3.85 GPA is not your standard to select the best student. You will start to select the 4.0 students. So which means these kind of technology tools, if everyone started to use it, the standard of how people critique about a product will also be changing and not compare with the old-time standard. So I feel like with people having fear about what if AI just like started to create art itself and I'm not an artist, don't worry about it. People still will pay a lot of like respect to the original art we're creating. I think it can also describe as the ready-made in sculpture. I think all of the artists here know what I'm talking about, the ready-made. When the ready-made came out, people were using toilet, using daily object like a bicycle to create a sculpture, right? And at that time, we don't think that's art. But the thing is, AI cannot replace your idea, all of your thinking. it can only be you're training a staff that doesn't have a brain, but can figure out what are the getting to ground logistic for you. Let's say I wanted to like do a big installation, but I don't know how I'm gonna start it. And I have these idea. How am I gonna make it? I don't know. I don't want to pay for people. I don't have time to ask for a professor. I don't have time to ask for other artists. So I'm gonna do research from AI. I'm started to build it one by one steps. So it's only a platform and a tool to help me make sure that a lot of the logistics are not wasting my time. That's one of my experience with AI and everything. And for if you guys are interested, I'll stay by the end for the meeting. If you guys have a Q&A, or if you guys wanted to know what are the software that I use for generating images or like training a 3D model, I'm free to share. And I think that should be it. Yeah. Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you, Edie. Thank you for those who have placed some questions in the chat, and we continue to encourage questions for our presenters today. I know Rich started responding in the chat, but I'll go ahead and read for those for whom this would benefit hearing the questions. I'll go ahead and read. So we have one question from the product manager at the Poetry Foundation. Thank you, Erin, who's expressed concern with protecting both the livelihood of the poets whose work we publish and their copyrights on their work. Panelists, folks who, and this, I think, I want to open it up for sure to the panelists, but as a community, I also invite responses in the chat, or if someone would like to also respond, you're welcome to. So in terms of protecting both the livelihood of the poets whose work is published by Poetry Foundation, their copyrights on their work, what tips are there in developing policy to assure artists that we organizations are not sharing their work to train large language models or LLMs? I did put in the chat, not directly in response, Erin, but I dropped a webinar that Lawyers for the Creative Arts previously released. The recording is available online around what writers need to know about AI, and they do speak to copyright as well as guidance for, I think, for writers and editors in terms of like, what happens to my work if it is at all fed into one of these large language models. And we heard some things, I think, from Rich around setting up some of these platforms. If you are using them internally as an organization, there are ways to ensure that the settings have some guardrails around what is training a large language model that's like pervasive and kind of out there in the public versus contained to your organization. But there are also, I think, some helpful considerations and guidelines around what you can put in a contract, the conversations you can have that a writer can have with members of their team in the editing and publishing world. And I think for Poetry Foundation, some of what was mentioned earlier in this webinar around more AI education for staff, so that there is awareness or the sharing of, I think sometimes dedicated training for staff is helpful, so then you can ask really specific questions. Today's webinar is very general, and we know that there are very specific, nuanced concerns and questions depending on your artistic discipline, from image generation to as a visual artist, and getting critiqued, as Edie had spoken to, using tools for that, versus literary artists who have concerns about copyright law. So I would point folks as well to these other resources. I'm going to do my best to keep dropping them in the chat.
Sasha, there was also, so there was a question I answered, that came up regarding job displacement. And I just want to just first, although I mentioned that, we would see that in the area of like coding and technology and that, but absolutely there has been effects and there will be continued effects of job displacement as it relates to operations. And one of the things that, like I mentioned before earlier on, like 40% of our clientele are nonprofits, and a lot of them derive their funding from different sources. Some of it comes from government programs and things of that nature. Some of it comes from actual foundations and so forth, and some of it just comes from private donors as well. But when the cutbacks that have occurred in the actual industry, um, the key thing is then it's caused actual organizations to look at how are we going to make cuts and save money and so forth. There's two perspectives on how organizations have approached this. Some make immediate cuts, and some have taken the different approach of looking at how can we diversify where our funding is coming from. So the ones that we have seen where they have used AI proactively is actually looking at how can we write better grants, our grant applications better and more thorough and faster and more efficiently, so we could get in more and different funding sources as well. One of all the products I mentioned out there, one of them, Anthropic's Claude, they actually they offer a specialized nonprofit type version, which is at a low cost type model at like I think it's like $8 a month or that for a 501(c) nonprofit, and they actually have modules in there that help people write better grant applications and so forth. And again, because you're buying a licensed product, you're only sharing that data within your organization as well. Again, if there's one thing you walk away from here today, regardless of what tools you use, just keep in mind whenever you're utilizing any type of free version or that out there, anything that you put into that application is becoming part of that application's environment and can be potentially shared with everybody. Again, it's like that. The only way that AI grows, it's that infant child. And the more stimulus that child experiences, that's how that child learns. A lot. And then when it comes down to content creation and things of that nature, early in my career, I spent a significant amount of time in China. And if you ever gone to any of the markets in Hong Kong or that, you know, it's not real Gucci, it's not real Rolexes out there. So, I mean, that environment has existed for a long period of time and continues that people are going to be copying things, whether it's actual goods and merchandise, whether it is actual art, pieces of art or content for that matter. It's absolutely right. You have to work with what you're actually sharing and how you're sharing it, how you're protecting yourself. And that's why when it comes to utilizing AI applications, you just have to make a conscious decision of which ones I'm going to use. Why am I going to use it? How am I going to use it? If you are an organization, if you don't have a policy today, you should really start working on structuring a policy and then figuring out how you're actually going to enforce the policy. And there are automated ways. It's not just a policy is just not an agreement that an employee signs, but there's also ways that you can use technology to enforce those policies so that way your own employees are not sharing parts of the organization. I know a lot of, like, for example, a lot of our clients that are museums, naturally moving a lot of their digital images and content and everything to be accessible online. Actually, a lot of that started right around COVID when you couldn't actually go into a museum and see artwork and everything. So they started moving a lot of their collections to become digitized and put that online. So those types of organizations should be very concerned that, okay, if I have a digitized collection, how how accessible is that to the field, and what is accessing this data and this information and these images and so forth, and how is it actually being used? So having an AI policy within the organization and then enforcing that policy utilizing technology could help protect a lot of those collections that they've already digitized and spent so much money on putting it out there.
Thanks, Richard. Just continuing to look at questions. Elizabeth's question around job displacement, just adding on to what Richard said, I also dropped in the chat. And you can come to Arts Alliance's help desk for more resources, or I'm happy to also, as needed, for any organizations or individual artists on today's webinar who are curious about resources, trainings, different workforce development programs that are in this moment doing their best to align training, curriculum, develop apprenticeships that are accounting for the needs in tech at this moment from cybersecurity, but also at the intersection of, I think, also these new large language models and how they work. There are no cost free, very intentionally minded communities who want to ensure that there's as much open source and open access to the use of these tools, how to apply them, what considerations to have around using them, and then again ensuring that the most under-resourced and underserved communities can access that through dedicated training and partnerships. Bella with Town Springfield, thanks for joining. Are there resources on how to develop an AI policy geared towards arts nonprofits? Thanks, Carrie, for putting a resource in the chat. And similarly, when I send the follow-up to today's attendees, we can include some other resources that can speak to or hopefully even provide some templates around some policies that can then be augmented and tailored for your own organization's use. But having a policy and working with key members of the team, not just to develop it, as Richard said, but also in ensuring that it is a policy that that can be enforced and that is representative, I think, of all of the views and perspectives in the organization is just a good exercise, I think, given the moment we're in.
And Sasha, if I may, hi everyone. My name's Coleman. I work with Rich at Sagin. Before moving into technology, I was an art dealer, gallery director, and auctioneer for 12 years. I'm a huge advocate for the arts, and it's one of the most important parts of my life and career. So please utilize us as a resource as well. This is something that we're actively participating in with a number of clients, helping to craft a vision, helping to protect that vision for wonderful institutions and cultural organizations that are enhancing our community. So that's our goal, is to kind of join with you and work alongside you to protect all those really important mission-driven initiatives. So I'm happy to be a resource. I'm going to follow up with everyone to, please utilize us. We can help identify areas where technology, cybersecurity, operational support, or AI policy development might strengthen your organization. That's a big passion of mine and what we do here, and we'd love to be considered and work alongside you. So yeah, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks everyone for your attention and your questions, and really for the community that's jumping into the chat to also answer questions and help one another in terms of exporting chat history. And I think this is the start of, I think, not just this topic, but kind of more topics to come from Arts Alliance in partnership with organizations all in service of keeping everyone up to date, not just around technology, access to grants and funding. Please visit the help desk if you have any specific questions. And thank you again all for joining. We appreciate you, and look out for a follow-up email with resources on this recording. Thank you, Sagin team. Thank you, Yidi. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.